Thanks again for joining us for today's webcast, Is Office 365 Right for You? Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's first presenter, Tara McKenzie. Tara, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Sydney. Good morning, good afternoon, based on where you are. My name is Tara McKenzie, and I'm part of the Global Alliances team here at Dell Software. It's my pleasure to introduce the speakers for today's webcast, Is Office 365 Right for You? Kicking off the presentation will be Molly McCarthy. She is a Senior Product Manager for Office 365 with Microsoft. Molly will then be followed by Dell's own Ron Robbins. Ron is a Product Manager for our Dell Migration Solutions. And then we will finish up with a valuable partner to both Dell and Microsoft, that is Infrascience. From Infrascience, we have both Mark Pierce and Mike Hammock joining us today. I did want to also add a comment to Sydney's instructions about the Q&A. If you want your question addressed by a specific speaker, please be sure to include either the organization name or the speaker name in your question, and we will make sure it gets routed appropriately. Once again, thanks for joining us today. Without further ado, I turn the floor over to Molly. Molly, you're up.
Well, thank you so much. So, hello everyone. My name is Molly McCarthy. I am a member of the U.S. Office 365 team in the U.S. subsidiary of Microsoft. It's a beautiful day in Seattle, so I'm excited to talk with you today. Now, I spend my time actually helping customers understand how the Office family of products really can help them get more things done and drive better business results. Now, you may have seen through some of the commercials that we have out there and stuff that we're seeing through right now that it is a great time of energy and excitement at Microsoft because our product pipeline is more full now than in the 15 years that I've been with the company. We're in the midst of launching our two flagship products, both Windows and Office, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with you about Office 365, which is our cloud version of the great Office family of products that have been in market for over 30 years. Now, there are two different topics that I'm going to talk with you about today. Specifically, I want to talk with you, one, around the big investments that we've made from an innovation standpoint around specific things about Office and the Office platform, really around the specific features and functions of what we're delivering to deliver a great experience. Now, when I talk about that platform, I'm really talking about the marriage of Office with SharePoint, with Exchange, and with Lync to really deliver a great experience for your end users to really be able to get things done in the most efficient way possible, be that in a cloud type of deployment or an on-prem type of deployment. Second big topic that I'll talk about is really around the next value of, or the next generation of Exchange, specifically really around what are some of the end user features that are coming with Exchange, as well as some IT types of functions. And then at the conclusion of that, I'll transition back to Rob so he can talk about more around really making it happen for you. So with that, let's go ahead and kind of do an introduction to the next generation of Office, which we're really marketing around the new Office. We've got really four pillars of innovation that we're delivering, really first around devices. Now, obviously, this is in direct response to customers using a proliferation of devices, and in fact, many of our customers are going with a policy around a bring your own device to work type of situation. Now, with that, we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those customers and those end users by delivering a great Office experience regardless of the device that people are using. The proliferation of touch is really the new innovation that's coming there. So some of the specific features and innovations are really around delivering a great experience in a touch type of environment or in a traditional PC environment. Apps obviously are a big innovation that have really happened both with Windows as well as Office, so making sure that we're always optimizing for touch. And again, in recognition of how people are using different devices, historically Microsoft has always delivered first and best on Windows, but we also want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of customers using competitive devices, so you really see innovation around that as well. Now, the immersion of the cloud really has unleashed a whole new level of potential and users, and also a new way for us to be able to deliver a great deployment experience for our IT contacts as well. Specifically really around having Office Click to Run, where you can actually have a full Office experience downloaded via the web, depending on bandwidth, of course, within a few minutes, recognizing that people are always on the go and in different locations. We've also got some tweaks to our licensing that come with that as well to be able to meet the needs of that technology. Cloud app, obviously we want to make sure we're delivering a great experience for those developers, and then at Microsoft, of course, standards and reliability is something that we always want to make sure we're delivering. The third really pillar around innovation that we're really going after is around social, and this again is in response to hearing from customers around how they're using technology, how the next generation of workers coming into the workplace really are changing the expectations of technology. We wanted to make sure we were delivering a great experience that takes advantage and harnesses the momentum of social while also mitigating any of the risks that our customers have told us concern them around social. Specifically, really delivering a great experience around news feeds and microblogging. Obviously, we acquired Yammer to be able to bring that into the IT infrastructure as well, bringing across that social experience across all of the applications in Office, and you'll see some examples where that comes up through things like contact cards that are a familiar UI via link, but also, again, use some of that great potential for social. And obviously, the acquisition of Skype really gives a new opportunity for us to be able to open some new ways of communication between workers as well as people working with folks outside of their firewall, and then obviously in the contact-to-contact different type of arena as well. Finally, the fourth pillar is really around control, and this is specifically where we start to get into some of the greatness around Exchange, which is what I'll talk about next. Of course, you know, having done this for so many years and having been fortunate to have many customers that we work with, we want to make sure that we are taking the right steps to be able to give customers the control that they want and need while also delivering that great end-user experience. Specific investments are really around data loss prevention, data retention, better ways to be able to have e-discovery, to be able to discover things around documents, communications, be it, you know, typical email, phone conversations, link, et cetera. Different types of deployment opportunities that come with that as well. We talked about click to run. That also gives a new sense of control and optics into what is running within an infrastructure, and really delivering a common management experience across Office 365. Now, shifting into really around Exchange and where Exchange lights up, really there's three big areas to be thinking about that value. One is really giving, again, that sense of control to those IT users, but also making sure that we give them the same amount of control and insight into their infrastructure, whether they are using an on-prem environment, a cloud environment, or some type of hybrid environment. Now, we hear from our customers that despite, you know, all of the great momentum and innovation that's coming with the cloud, many customers are choosing to go with some type of a hybrid model for them to be able to stick their toe into a cloud kind of architecture and be able to meet the needs of their business, specifically to what it is they're trying to get done. And that's where Microsoft really shines and Exchange really lights this up, giving those end users the opportunity to have the right solution that they need to meet their business model, as well as IT folks to be able to have the right sense of empowerment there. Doing more on any device, we talked about the proliferation of devices. We also see, though, that there's increasing volumes of communication and volumes of data. People are working together in a more team-like environment, but maybe not necessarily in the same location. Technology can really light that up and light up that experience there. And the following area is really around keeping the organization safe, so protecting sensitive business information, protecting intellectual property. Customers really want to make sure that they're taking advantage and using all the information that they have in their infrastructure, but keeping it safe. Compliance, again, due to our experience and having done this for a while, we want to make sure we're delivering that great experience around compliance. So now that we have a sense of kind of the overall investments and where we're really looking at delivering that great experience, let's look at specifically a couple of screenshots around what the end user perspective is as well as that IT perspective. Now, of course, Exchange married with Outlook really delivers a great productivity experience, and in many cases, customers are telling us that when they think of Office, they're really thinking of Outlook because that's where many end users actually spend their time. And going back to that great touch experience really being lit up with Windows 8 as well as any competitive devices via that Office experience, this is where we've seen some true innovation around the UI changing to reflect that touch environment. The ribbon, which actually was delivered in the 2007 suite of products, we actually minimized that in a touch type of environment, changing the way navigation actually functions a little bit so that we take away some of the real estate from that navigation pane and actually deploy it into the actual task that the end user is really trying to accomplish. And then obviously putting things into a touch mode where things are very quick around quick actions, finger friendly, again, optimizing for touch. Specifically then really consolidating different views from different sources. In this case, we're looking at an example where someone is sitting in their inbox, yet still able to see their calendar both from a month perspective as well as a specific date perspective. That's actually through the quick peeks innovation that really come there, so that you can get that sense of what's going on in your day and manage your day without even leaving your inbox. Inline reply is another recognition of that touch environment. Again, people don't have to leave their inbox while they're still able to be productive and be able to respond to email and get done what it is they're trying to get done. Now, we talked a little bit about collaboration with teams really starting to impact how people are actually getting things done, and those teams are not necessarily all in the same location. A couple of few innovations there around having team folders and really being able to have specific team aliases, bringing together communication for folks that are actually working in one type of a project. That also unifies across documents, and through some of the functionality with SharePoint allows you to share team documents that are on a specific project or a specific team into one location, really slimming down and streamlining some of that communication there. Of course, we're all on the go, and we all want to make sure that we're connected. Obviously, with the cloud, we need to have a connection there, and we've got some innovations around what that actually looks like, as well as what happens when you may lose your connection. Outlook is really designed and optimized for whether somebody is using a browser, whether they're using a tablet, or whether they're using a smartphone. Again, aligning that inbox to be able to bring things together around views where people are actually looking at their emails, looking specifically at what it is they're trying to get done without having to leave that same UI. Again, very much in response to that type of UI that folks are using. Now, again, through the cloud, obviously you need to have a connection, but what happens if you actually don't have a connection? Being able to take your work offline is critical for anybody that's using Office 365, and through some of the innovations around document caching and Outlook Web Apps caching mode, you still are able to get done what it is you're trying to get done and remain productive regardless if somebody loses their internet connection even for a few minutes. Really around finding people and connecting people with information is something that we always want to make sure that we're doing. Again, helping people find that path through the volume of information so they're able to get done what it is they're trying to get done. Bringing together what you're looking at here is really kind of around the look of the UI with Link, obviously with Calendar, with Outlook, being able to see access into what people are looking at from a membership perspective, really bringing that together and having that integration with the social networks is a new innovation that comes with the new Office as well. We've improved some of the search functionality too, being able to search your inbox, not even just at your folder level, but also within your entire mailbox so that you can look at your inbox, your sent items, your deleted items, your conversation view, really within that same UI and within the same search that you're actually executing. Again, get things done more quickly and much more easily. We've talked about control. We've talked a little bit about some of the end-user functionality here, but also compliance is something we also want to make sure we're delivering. In the 2007 and 2010 platforms of mirroring Exchange with 2000, you're actually seeing some of the mail tips really come to light, and this is an augmentation of where mail tips has gone with the new Office. Now being able to help customers be compliant and sniff out things that are at risk of releasing specific personally identifiable information or intellectual property. At this point, we're seeing an example where Exchange is sniffing an email that somebody is actually sending out saying, hey, just a second, end user, this looks like a credit card number. Is this something that you actually want to send to outside of your infrastructure? Again, an opportunity for folks to be able to have more control and be able to protect themselves a little bit. Now, talking with those IT administrators, we're also hearing a lot about what's costing IT a lot of money, where end users have to call IT and call help desk to get information. So we wanted to really meet that need and beef up the functionality that delivers self-service types of options. Now, we know that end users are often trying to get a couple of things done, and we want to make sure that those are things they can get done much more easily through a self-service type of kiosk, changing their account information or their phone information, editing their contact details, being able to manage any of the distribution groups that they actually belong to, being able to go ahead and take control over their voicemail, any incoming or outgoing messages, managing their mobile device, driving their text messages into their Outlook inbox. Those are all innovations that actually come through some of this self-service type of portal. Again, an easy UI for that end user, but also really relieves the burden of IT from having to do a lot of that on their own. So we've certainly highlighted just a couple of things that really come with the new Exchange and with the new Office. Obviously, there is a whole lot more information out there, and as we continue to get closer to having all of this in market, you will hear more in the press, and obviously through great partnerships like we have today. Certainly feel free to reach out to us and take a look at all of our web assets to be able to understand more about what's coming. Again, in summary, really it's about maintaining a sense of control for our end users, but also unleashing that power for those end users to be able to get done what it is they're trying to get done, responding to the whole proliferation of devices, being able to deliver a great experience regardless of the device that folks are using, but also maintaining that sense of protection and protecting the compliance that any of our customers are trying to meet. Now, obviously, today we're talking about Office 365. Office 365 is the cloud version of the Office products that you are likely running right now. Many of our customers are running into a hybrid environment. Ultimately, the choice is up to you. We've architected the product that we can deliver a great experience and give you the power of whether you go with cloud, on-prem, or a hybrid environment to meet the needs of your infrastructure. Now, with that, I know Ron's got a great commentary about how to actually make some of this stuff happen. Ron, I'll transition to you so we can talk about more around how we actually make this come to life for the end users.
Great. Thanks, Molly. I really appreciate it. As Molly stated, my name is Ron Robbins. I'm a product manager here at Dell Software, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Office 365 and successful tips for an Office 365 migration. And then I'm going to talk about some of the solutions that we offer here at Dell to help you along the way and help you get started in your Office 365 migration and migrate over to that platform. The first thing you need to do in any good migration project is first understand your organization. You need to do some preparation beforehand and really ask yourself some planning questions to get started in the planning process before you begin your migration. You need to know what you're going to migrate, and that starts with how many users you have, take an inventory of what your existing environment looks like, how do these users work together, what do they need to get their job done and on a daily basis. You have to look at what's deployed to the desktop. What kind of software do I have at the desktop? There's certain features in Office 365 and the newer version of Office 365 that require certain desktop software requirements in order for all the features to be available. So Office 2010, Outlook 2010 or 2013 may be required in some instances for certain features that are available in Office 365. You need to look at how your user machines are going to be configured. Are you going to use some kind of integrated sign-on service like a single sign-on? Are you going to deploy that and federate your directories? How is your identity going to be managed, or how your identity is going to be managed and compliance be handled? Are users going to be automatically created in the cloud with Microsoft's directory sync? Are you going to handle compliance by keeping sensitive data on-premise and only migrating users up that don't handle sensitive data into Office 365? Those are definitely things to be considered. There's a seamless approach to searching for data that would allow you to meet some of those compliance needs, and those need to be looked at. Also, you need to discuss whether or not you're going to move your entire company into Office 365 or whether you're going to deploy in some type of hybrid model. Usually a hybrid model involves slightly more complexity, but does offer some type of coexistence or collaboration between the on-prem and Office 365 models or Office 365 platform, and allows your users to continue to communicate while they're in that coexistence phase. And how you're going to provision users in Office 365, as we mentioned before, whether or not that's going to be automated or you're going to do manually provisioning when a new user comes on board. So you also want to prepare your environment. A lot of times in a migration project, one of the biggest things that's ignored or not done enough is pre-migration assessment and preparation. You want to look at how much data you have, look at what the size is of your migration project. So how long is it going to take you to migrate all your users and all your data over? Where are you going to store these users on the target, and where are you going to store the data on the target? Do you have to keep some users close together? Maybe if you have to keep some users on-premise, maybe your high-volume users might have to stay on-premise while you move some low-volume users to the cloud if you're going to do that hybrid-type deployment. You have to make a decision on the cloud. What target are you going to be migrating to? Are you going to migrate up to Office 365? Is that what's right for you? Or is it something where you just want to upgrade your on-prem platform and just migrate on-premise? You need to assess the costs and weigh the value of what Office 365 is going to bring to your organization. And then you got to look at application migration considerations. Are there any applications that are mail-enabled on-premise? Is there functionality that's needed by your users that's integrated into mail? Do they have SharePoint on-premise? Are they considering migrating that up to Office 365 as well? Is there some workflow in SharePoint that needs to be migrated over to Office 365 and converted into what SharePoint can do in Office 365? Those things have to be assessed and considered before the migration even begins. You need to look at your bandwidth consideration. Since this is a migration to the cloud, you're going to be using your internet connection to migrate data up to the cloud. So you have to look at whether or not you need to upgrade that bandwidth before the migration. Also, after the migration is complete, everybody's going to be using that internet connection or that pipe out to the internet to be able to access Office 365. So you should look at whether or not that needs to be upgraded before you perform your migration. You also need to establish some type of verification criteria. How are you going to compare mailboxes after the migration is complete to verify that all the data was migrated over completely and verify that everybody got their target mailbox migrated over with very little error or very little emissions out of the mailbox? And that can be done through a simple mailbox comparison report. Should also plan for any contingencies during the migration. If there's anything that's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong basically. And so you need to make sure that if you have a disaster or have something where data loss occurs, that you have a contingency plan in place that allows you to perform a complete recovery from any data loss or any problems that occur during the migration. That involves doing regular backups, performing regular backups, and just preparing for anything unknown that might happen during the migration. The next thing you want to do is you want to prepare your organization. You should execute a pilot. Pilots are a very important part of a migration project. You want to include people in your pilot that would not fix the problem on their own. So a lot of people make the mistake of including their IT department or their help desk in their migration pilot. And that's not always the best situation because usually people who are very technical are going to go out and fix the problem on their own if they encounter an issue, and they're probably not going to report back to you minor issues they might encounter in Outlook or in their target mailbox that they can just fix on their own. So you want to include people from various groups within your organization, from very different business segments, because each business segment is going to have a different need. You want to make sure that you have a written plan that you test against during the pilot, and make sure that you revise that based on any feedback from your users. This time's also to perform a performance benchmark to make sure you understand how long it's going to take you to migrate over to Office 365 or the other target system you might be migrating to. You want to validate your migration prior to beginning your full migration. Make sure that you have a quality tool in place to perform the migration. Supposedly you've already selected a tool that you're going to do your migration here at this point. You want to configure, solidify the process, make sure that you have a solid process in place that's been rewritten based on the feedback you got on your pilot migration. And you want to make sure that you look for any areas where you can reduce risk at this time. Make sure that if there's any risky areas in your migration plan, that you have a plan in place to mitigate that if something were to occur. Another important aspect of the migration is communication. You want to make sure that you communicate to upper management, of course, all your employees that are involved in the migration and the IT department to prepare them for what's going to happen. Then you also want to perform any training for employees, making sure that any differences in the client they're going to be using to access Office 365, that they know what those differences are, they know how to do their work in this new client. If you're migrating off of something, let's say Gmail or a foreign platform like Notes or GroupWise, there's going to be a lot of client training involved because the client's going to completely change for them when they go to Office 365. You also want to choose the right migration solution. A lot of places where people look first for a migration solution is native tools. A lot of times there's a limitation in native tools that it may not give you exactly what you're looking for, so you want to make sure you look at that and evaluate the solution that's offered to you for free and make sure that you look to see if you're losing anything. A lot of times ease of use or the ability to easily track issues or there might be the loss of migration of certain types of data from foreign platforms, or it might just be something that doesn't meet your need. You want to look at that and see and determine whether or not native tools are really right for you. The second thing to look for is support. You want to make sure that if you have a problem, whether using native tools or a third-party solution, that you can call up and get answers to your questions very quickly, and you can get your issues resolved in a very short period of time. Can you reach support in any hour of the day, any day of the week? And when you call in and get support assistance, do those people have the expertise it takes to answer your questions? Have they been down that road before, and have they seen several different migration scenarios so they're not surprised by what you're doing? You want to look at performance, how fast your migration solution can migrate data over. You want to be able to select a solution that has data filtering capabilities to limit the amount of data that's being migrated over and to not migrate data that really isn't needed over on the target. Maybe if you don't want to bring over data that's older than 90 days, you want to be able to filter that data out. You want to look at deduplication capabilities, the ability to migrate data or migrate a mailbox twice and not duplicate any data. You want to look at detailed logging so you can quickly locate a problem and find issues very easily. You want to look at something that does folder migration and mapping to be able to bring over things like folders and subfolders and the whole folder hierarchy within a mailbox and make sure that that data is located in the same place on the target as it was in the source so that users can easily find data that they've saved before. Then you want to look at any items that don't get migrated by a third-party solution. Sometimes there's items that are skipped. Maybe the technology is different from solution to solution, or maybe it's different from source platform to source platform, and you want to make sure you understand what may not get migrated in your migration project. You also want to evaluate the value of a migration partner. In a little bit, Mike from Infrascience is going to be on the line, and he's going to talk to us about the Infrascience solution. And it's very important to look at a migration partner when you're considering a migration. A lot of times, IT workers only do a migration once or twice in their IT career. We have migration partners that we use all the time at Dell that allows us to give users somebody who's an expert in the area of migration, and they're able to answer questions. They usually have seen a very wide number of migration scenarios and been on a wide number of migration projects, and they're usually the experts that have done this over and over and over again and have a proven process for success. And so it's very important to look at partners and look at somebody who's an expert in doing Exchange migrations and in doing migrations to Office 365. So let's talk about Dell's zero-impact migration solutions. We have a three-part process or approach that we take to migration, and that's prepare, migrate, and manage. In the prepare section, we do have tools that help you prepare your migration project by doing usage and data analysis, doing inventory reporting, looking at your entire organization on the source, determining what users you have, where they're located, who the busiest users are, what type of data they have, and what size data they have, so you know how long it's going to take to do your migration. We also offer the ability to do cleanup and consolidation on the source by doing a report for duplicate entries, doing a report for users that might have more than one account, looking at orphaned accounts and being able to clean those up prior to migration, so you're not migrating data that you don't need to migrate. We do support several source platforms, including Lotus Notes and GroupWise, Gmail, Exchange, SharePoint, Active Directory, and we also migrate from other directory services like NDS Directory. We do migrate Exchange public folders, so we do have a solution that allows us to migrate that. And we also migrate Windows file shares through a consolidation effort, and this is an on-prem to on-prem migration, of course, but we will migrate and consolidate your Windows file shares. We do support many different target platforms, Exchange Online, SharePoint and SharePoint Online. We support migrating and consolidating Active Directory, Link, and OCS as well. And then in the management category, post-migration, we do offer solutions for compliance and security, being able to ensure that your data is safe and that we can track if anything happens to that data, and then also recovery and email discovery and performance and availability. The solution I'm going to talk to you about today here is on-demand migration for email. This is our solution to migrate on-premise Exchange, Gmail, Novell GroupWise, over to Office 365. It is an on-demand product, which means it's completely offered in the cloud. It's offered as an on-demand solution, which is located in our Windows Azure data center. There's nothing to install on-premise. It's all served up through a web browser, and it's something that's very easily to use and can migrate you over in a very short period of time with very few prompts. When you go into on-demand migration for email through your web browser, you'll see a welcome screen. The welcome screen offers a high level of steps that you would take to migrate over to Office 365. It's really just a breadcrumb trail of the steps you're going to go through to get over to Office 365 on the next few screens and what you're going to need to migrate over to Office 365. On the next screen, you'll be prompted for the source connection and target connection. We do offer several different sources, like I mentioned in my previous email, and we offer migration over to Office 365 up to a hosted Exchange solution and also Exchange on-prem. The target and source connections can be tested to make sure that they're going to work prior to migration, and we can migrate up to 10 users at a time per admin credential that's added here on this screen. So we can add many admin credentials, so we can migrate up to 10 users, 100 users, thousands of users at a single time concurrently over to Office 365. When you're ready to import a list of mailboxes, this is just a CSV file with a single column of usernames located in it. It assumes that the usernames are the same on the source and target. If they're different, you can create a second column in your import file, and it'll allow you to match up users manually by importing that list into the Quest On-Demand solution. Then you can select options or things that you want to migrate. This is where filtering comes into play. You can choose whether or not you want to migrate your email, your contacts, or your calendar items. You can choose whether or not you want to do a date filter. Maybe you want to do a phased migration where you migrate your newer data over first to get everybody over right away, and then go back and do a second pass and get the older legacy data in a second pass later on. That's certainly an option you can do. And then once you kick off the migration, you have complete visibility into what's running, what's completed. You can view a log file for any one of the mailboxes that are running and pull up their immediate audit log information to determine whether or not there's a problem during the migration. And you can actually fix problems during the migration to ensure that the problem is fixed and the user is going to have access to their data after the project's completed. So why choose Dell? Dell is a trusted partner. Dell has over 12 years migration experience and migrating customers over to Exchange and now up to Office 365. We've migrated over 30 million mailboxes, and we've migrated over 40 million users to Active Directory. The great thing about Dell is that we are an expert in migration. So we have migrated more users than any other provider of a migration solution out there, and we know what it takes to do an Exchange migration or to do an Active Directory migration. So we've seen many different scenarios, and we've talked to many different customers, and more than likely we've seen a scenario that you're involved in, and we'd be able to answer your questions if you were to call our support offices or deal with our professional services organization. So recommendations to get started next, check out our solutions at quest.com, Office 365. Evaluate your options. Make sure you take a look at how much it's going to cost for your project. Create an email and collaboration strategy so you can maintain communication during migration. You should talk to our experts. You can go up onto our community sites, look at our blog, and get information and advice from our experts today, and they're available to talk to you at any time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our great partners at Infrascience, and go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Ron. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mark Pierce. I am the National Messaging Practice Lead for Infrascience, and joined with me is Mike Hammock. He is the National Tech Lead for Office 365. He is the one that works only with Office 365 in our group with migrations and oversees the architecture. So what I wanted to do here is show best practices for Office 365, stuff that we've encountered before in the past in our migrations and stuff to watch out for. A little bit about who we are. Infrascience has been around for about 10 years, and we work with all types of companies, small business to enterprise companies. And we've been doing migrations since 2003, typically with the Exchange migrations, and now we're doing more BPOP 55 migrations now. Recently, we've migrated over 80,000 mailboxes into the Office 365 environment, and at any given time, we have 6 concurrent Office 365 migrations going, anything from Notes, GroupWise, Exchange, POP, different email environments that we move over. So we see a lot of different scenarios, different requirements, and I've done a lot of special things for customers to make sure they have a good experience through Office 365. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand off the mic over to Mike Hammock, and he will talk about Office 365 best practices and what we've seen. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Mark. So let's talk a little bit about Office 365. So we've talked a little bit before about some of the deployment models that you're going to need to consider, whether you want to go with a cloud-only model, that is all of your users, all of your services for messaging and collaboration deployed in the cloud, or whether you want to go with a hybrid model. And one of the things that they've told you about before is that with hybrid you can have some of your users on-premise and some of your users up in the cloud, but you can even break it down more than that if you want. You can have some of your services and some of your functionality on-premise and some of your services and some of your functionality being deployed by Office 365. And I'll get into that in a little bit more here in a second. So after you've picked what your company's deployment model should be, you want to take a look at what features you're going to need to deploy. Now, Office 365 has got a whole lot of different features in it, and most of them are great and require very little effort in terms of on-premise infrastructure to deploy, but some of them are a little expensive in terms of what you have to do to actually get that feature to work. So you want to sit down and look at the features that are available and make a decision as to whether your company actually needs all of the features or some of the features and which ones are absolutely critical. You can even choose which features you need on day one, which features you may deploy in 6 months or a year after going to Office 365. So things like directory synchronization makes it a lot easier for your administrators if they only have to administer their own Active Directory environment. All their changes get replicated up to the cloud. They don't have 2 directories where they have to make changes, create new users, and things like that. Single sign-on, as Ron mentioned, you can federate with Active Directory federation services. There's also the possibility for doing password synchronization, which is kind of the same end-user experience with a little bit less security, a little bit less control, but it requires a lot less in terms of infrastructure. You can even deploy enhanced coexistence, like what I mentioned before. You can have a hosted archive. It's one of my favorite features of Office 365. We quite frequently run into companies that, they designed Exchange when they had 50 people, and all of a sudden their company is 150 people. They just don't have the storage space or the capacity to keep up with their demand. So what you can do is actually have the user's primary mailbox on-premise and have a hosted archive up in Office 365. It really allows you to extend your company, supplement your company's storage infrastructure using resources up in the cloud. Same thing for hosted voicemail. If you guys haven't had a chance to take a look at Exchange's unified messaging functionality for voicemail, it's absolutely phenomenal. You get a transcription of your voicemails in your inbox. It's got a player built into Outlook, so you can click a button and listen to the voicemail. And one of my favorite things is if it can't quite interpret a phrase correctly, you don't have to listen to the entire 10-minute voicemail to figure out what that one little segment said. You can actually click on that segment of text that you're not sure what it meant, and it'll start playing the recording right at that part. It saves you a lot of time. So after you've determined what your feature requirements are, you want to take a look at licensing. Office 365 comes in two different flavors of licensing. There's the enterprise or e-licensing. There's also the personal or SMB licenses. Those are probably not going to be used by anybody on the call today. Those are for companies that never plan on growing past 50 users. You're capped at 50 people. Even within the enterprise licensing, you have to figure out which features you really need. There's quite a breakdown in terms of not only what products are available between the various licensing levels, but also the quality of those products. So, for example, one of the e-licenses will come with a 25 gigabyte personal archive, and another one might be unlimited personal archive. So you really want to take a look and see what your company needs, and don't buy more than you actually need. And then you have to pick a migration strategy. I think Ron spoke to this a little bit. There are two basic migration strategies that are available. There's a cutover. You move all of your stuff into Office 365 over a weekend. You can either pre-stage your data so it's there ahead of time, or post-stage it into Office 365 after you do the cutover. But the concept is everybody leaves on a Friday afternoon using your existing email system. When you come in on Monday morning, everybody's been moved to the cloud. In contrast, you can also do a staged migration where you move a couple of people at a time, kind of a trickle effect, or you can even move them in batches. But the point is that you've got, at some point in time, some people on-premise, some people up in the cloud, which leads us directly into coexistence. So if you're going to take a staged migration approach, you need to take a look at what your coexistence requirements are. Do you need to have FreeBusy from the cloud to on-premise and vice versa? Do you have shared mailboxes that people need to access? Do you have people in your company who've delegated access to their calendar or contacts to other users? Those are all things that you need to consider when you're doing a staged migration in terms of your coexistence requirements. So now that you're ready to move to Office 365, there's some things that you can do ahead of time to make your transition a little easier. The first thing is to verify the health of Active Directory. If you've got any issues going on with Active Directory on-premise, replicating those problems up to the cloud isn't going to make your day any easier. You want to make sure that your domain is clean, that your domain is healthy, your replication is working, things like that. You also want to take a look at the user accounts and group accounts that you're going to be replicating up to Office 365 if you're going to be using directory synchronization. For those two, Microsoft has an Active Directory readiness tool that you can run that'll tell you whether or not you're having any serious issues in terms of things being replicated up to the cloud. It'll identify attributes that are invalid. Even beyond that, what you want to check is to make sure that the attributes in Active Directory not only are valid, but they're also accurate. No tool is going to tell you that, hey, Mike Hammock's cell phone number in his Active Directory account's out of date. He's got a new cell phone number. So before you upgrade might be the time to go through and look at that information and have everybody validate their own information. You also, as Ron mentioned, clean up users, groups, contacts, things that you don't need to replicate up to Office 365. A lot of corporate requirements prevent you from deleting old users. At the very least, segregate them off into a separate organizational unit so that you're not replicating those up. You can exclude that organizational unit from replication so they're not getting sent out to the cloud. There are also some software requirements for Office 365. You have to be running a specific version of Office. You have to be running a specific version of Windows. So you want to make sure that your Office 365 software is all up to date before you go and do that. And lastly, sign up for an Office 365 trial. So if you want to take a look and see what Office 365 looks like, the best way to do that is actually to sign up for a trial and see what the software looks like. I believe Ron mentioned this one as well, but compile an inventory. When we sit down with a new client, one of the first things we're going to ask you is, hey, how many mailboxes do you have that you want to send to Office 365? How big is your mailbox database? We're also going to ask you in terms of, how many versions of Outlook 2007 are in the company versus 2010. So if you've got that information already prepared, it will make your migration a lot easier. You also want to consider the best time to migrate. So if your licenses for your on-premise infrastructure renew in March, February is a little too late to be taking a look at a migration. So, kind of plan that around renewal things for on-premise licensing. If you've got spam service licensing from WebRoot or Postini or whoever else out there, but right before that renews is probably the best time to migrate up so you're not renewing something for a year that you're only going to use for a couple of months. You also want to take a look at the Office 365 list of features and restrictions. This is just kind of a list of the software that's available in Office 365, as well as some of the features that don't quite work in the cloud yet. And I say yet because this list is constantly changing. Lastly, contact a partner. We're up to date on this information. We keep track of this when new features are available. Even before they're available to the general public, they'll usually let one of the partners know so that we can kind of prepare a client base for that. So if you're not sure about what features you need and what the restrictions are, contact a partner. We can help walk you through that. So there's actually a new version of Office 365 that's coming out here in March. It's called the New Office, or Wave 15. It's built on the 2013 line of products. So it's Exchange, Lync, SharePoint, all 2013. It also is Office Professional Plus 2013. There's a couple of new applications I wanted to highlight here. So Office Web Apps is new to Wave 15 here. Office Web Apps is a web-based version of Word, PowerPoint, and Excel that you can use for kind of quick and dirty editing of your applications without needing the full Office suite. If you're familiar with Google Web Apps, it's kind of similar, only it's based on the Microsoft stack. It's really good if you don't actually have the Office suite at home. You just want to quickly log in and edit something or using someone else's computer. And also my favorite one is called SkyDrive Pro. If any of you guys are familiar with Microsoft SkyDrive, previously known as Windows Live Mesh, it's kind of like Dropbox. You can put some applications on your computer, put some documents on your computer, and SkyDrive sends them up to the cloud. You can even replicate your documents between 2 or more computers using SkyDrive. SkyDrive Pro is the same functionality from an end user standpoint, only the back end is SharePoint Online. It's managed, monitored, controlled by your administrators. So it kind of extends that SkyDrive functionality, but for an office environment, so it can still be managed. It is added into compliance and search and things like that. It's a great application. Again, this is coming in March. Those of you who are already on Office 365 will get contacted sometime after that. If you're not on Office 365, if you sign up after March, you'll probably be on Wave 15 automatically. So also new to Wave 15 is a new onboarding approach. Microsoft calls it the Office 365 on-ramp. The concept is that you get your users into Office 365 as early as possible. Now, a large-scale deployment usually requires weeks and months to deploy directory synchronization, federation, all of these advanced features. And during that time, your user base is wondering why, if we pay for this product, we're not getting a chance to use. So the Microsoft on-ramp basically says get the users in early and you let them use the Office 365 services starting from day one if possible. Maybe it's not everybody. Maybe it's just for a trial or a proof of concept. But it's great to get the buy-in of upper management to actually spend the money to get the rest of the migration done. There's a couple of features that make this possible. The connected mailbox feature actually allows you to have a separate Office 365 namespace, a separate mailbox, but still be able to check your mail from your legacy application. So you can sign up for an Office 365 mailbox, use Connect Mailbox to check your existing mailbox, and still get the Office 365 experience. You can also deploy totally separate namespaces if you wanted to try that as well. And then as you get comfortable with it, as you determine what your needs are, you go through and you deploy those extra features. So there's a couple of pitfalls I'm going to warn you about, and this is definitely one of those lists that's ever-changing, and it changes week to week. But just some things to avoid while you're experimenting with Office 365. If you're familiar with Forefront Online Protection for Exchange, which has now been called Exchange Online Protection, don't sign up for a trial of that if you're planning on going to Office 365. If you use a domain in one of these services, it's very difficult to transfer it to another later on down the line. So if you're interested in those services, and you may also be interested in Office 365, skip the FOPI, skip the EOP trial, go straight into an Office 365 trial. That being said, you also don't want to configure production domains in your Office 365 trial until you're ready to actually start using the service. Keep your production domains out of that trial tenant. And once you do go into production, avoid setting up or even enabling the directory synchronization and Active Directory Federation services. Right now, even in Wave 15, some of these services can't be turned off once they've been turned on, so you definitely want to approach those with care. Also, don't deploy Exchange 2013 yet. Right now, there is you need to be in Wave 15, which isn't quite available yet before you deploy Exchange 2013. So if you think you may be going to the cloud in the next month or two, hold off on Exchange 2013. Stick with 2010. And lastly, contact a partner before you take on an Office 365 migration and start configuring your production tenant. It's very easy to make some missteps early in the configuration process that really make it much more difficult for you later on down the line. And with that, I turn us back over to Tara for some questions, I believe.
Great, thanks so much, Mike. There were a couple of questions that came in that were kind of housekeeping questions, so I'll go ahead and address those. They are, will this presentation be made available for viewing at a later time? And related to that, is it possible to get copies of the presentations used today? So the answers to that are yes and yes. We'll be reaching out probably within about the next 24 to 48 hours with instructions on how to access the on-demand version of today's webcast, and included in that will be the ability to download today's presentation. Then on to more specific product stuff. Can I re-migrate a mailbox once it has already been migrated?
Yeah, I think that's directed at me for the on-demand migration for email tool, and yes, you can re-migrate a mailbox. We actually provide for re-migrating mailboxes and migrating them several times. If you want to do a phased migration without creating any duplicates, you would just select the mailbox again when you create another job and migrate the mailbox over again. And the second pass would usually be with different filtering criteria, so you can do a multi-phased migration.
Okay. Does Office 365 support the use of on-premise archive solutions, such as Barracuda Message Archiver?
Yeah, absolutely. You can use the basic journaling rules that you're using in your on-premise environment now to journal to an outside source, be it on-premise or be it hosted. If your archiving solution actually requires mail to flow through it, then you can configure a hybrid mail flow where all of your email in and out of the cloud actually goes through an on-premise appliance to archive that way as well. So yes, you can, pretty much any archiving solution can be used with Office 365.
Okay, question from Bob. How do you recommend handling the file shares on local servers when migrating to Office 365?
I'm not sure what you mean by handling those. Typically, file shares stay on-premise. If you mean loading them into SharePoint, is that his question?
It didn't specify.
Yeah, it doesn't say on there, Mike, and I had the same questions. Basically, there's no concept of file sharing in Office 365. If you're referring to having users store their personal files up on SkyDrive, that might be something that they want to do. But for server storage, file shares, those will remain on-premise unless you're making a move off to SharePoint Online.
Okay. How does the on-demand migration product connect to on-premise Exchange?
We use a web services API to connect to on-premise Exchange. So with Exchange 2007 and 2010, it's web services, which is exposed through Outlook Web Access, and then through older versions of Exchange, it uses something called WebDAV, which is also exposed through Outlook Web Access. So basically, if you have your OS server installed and deployed and exposed to the Internet, we can connect to it with on-demand migration for email, and we can migrate from it over to Office 365.
Okay. Can a migrated user be rolled back?
Once a user's migrated, it's not really a rollback. We don't delete or move or modify or anything like that the mailbox on the source with on-demand migration for email. We just copy the data over. So if a user wanted to be rolled back, all they would have to do is be pointed back to their source mailbox and continue to use their source mailbox, and then you would, if you wanted to still migrate them over to Office 365, you would delete their Office 365 mailbox and remigrate them later. If they've been on Office 365 for a long period of time, you'd probably want to delete their source mailbox and then migrate them back on premise, which on-demand migration for email can do that as well.
Okay. Is the Office 365 on-ramp features available now, or is this only with Wave 15 new Office 365?
On-ramp's not so much a feature as it is a methodology. The connected mailbox feature that actually enables that on-ramp concept is already in Wave 14. If you log into your Office 365 account and go to the Exchange Control Panel, you can actually choose to connect your existing mailbox into Office 365 today.
Okay. For migration, are there any reasonable limits to the size of a mailbox store, total data size, number of mailboxes, size of mailboxes, etc.?
I'm sorry, is that in regards to migration?
Yes.
Yeah, so the on-demand migration for email tool will migrate up to the limit of the Office 365 mailbox limit, which I can't remember at the moment if it's 25 gig or 50 gig.
It's 25 gigs is the limit per a mailbox, but you can also use some techniques to migrate. So if I've got a 50 gig mailbox for some strange reason, you can also use some migration techniques to migrate part of my mail into my mailbox, which has a 25 gig limit, and part of my mail into my personal archive, which either has a 25, 100, or unlimited gigabyte limit.
Yeah, I only laugh, Mike, because I remember the days when 250 megabytes was the limit.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good practice.
Okay, we have a couple more questions, but being mindful that we're basically at the top of the hour, I just want to let everyone know that anyone whose question we did not have the ability to address, we will absolutely reach out and make sure you get the information that you've asked about. I wanted to quickly thank our experts today, Molly McCarthy from Microsoft, Ron Robbins from Dell, Mark Pierce and Mike Hammock from Infrascience. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. And a question did come in as well about the presentations, and once again, we will be following up within about 24 to 48 hours with an email that will include instructions on how to view this presentation in an on-demand format, and also you'll have the ability to download copies of this presentation. It is 3 o'clock, wrapped right on time. Thank you very much for everyone for your time today. Certainly appreciate you giving it to us. Have a great day.
And with that, I'd like to extend a special thanks to our presenters, and thank you all for joining us. You may now disconnect from the event.